The drive back to the city was quiet. Olivia sat in the back seat of the car, staring blankly at the road ahead. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her phone, but her face remained calm. She had done it. She had paid the price. Adema would be hers forever now. The old man had promised. But at what cost? A deep part of her refused to acknowledge the truth. She pushed the thought to the back of her mind. She had to focus on what mattered, winning Adema completely. Nothing else was important. Nothing. As soon as the driver pulled into Adema's compound, she stepped out, adjusting her dress and fixing her hair. She had to look perfect. She had to play her role. The moment she walked into the house, she saw him. Adema was sitting on the couch, his hands buried in his face. His body shook as deep, heart-wrenching sobs tore through him. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. "What happened?" she asked, her voice soft, pretending to be confused. Adema looked up at her, his eyes red and swollen. He looked broken, shattered. "Olivia!" His voice cracked. "The baby. Our baby is gone." For a moment Olivia stood frozen. She had expected him to be sad, but seeing him like this made her chest tighten. His grief was raw, painful, real. "No," she gasped, stumbling backward. She clutched her chest, and before she could say another word, she let out a faint cry and collapsed onto the floor. "Olivia!" Adema sprang to his feet and rushed to her side. He scooped her up in his arms, calling out for help. The maids rushed in, panic on their faces. "Bring water. Call the doctor." Adema barked orders as he held Olivia close to his chest, stroking her hair. His heart pounded with fear. He couldn't lose her too. Not after everything. After a few moments, Olivia slowly opened her eyes, blinking weakly. "Adema," she whispered. "I'm here, my love. I'm here," he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. She let out a soft sob, wrapping her arms around him. "Our baby. How did this happen?" Adema clenched his jaw, his body tensing with anger. "The housemaid. She was the only one with him. She must have done something. I've already called the police. She's been arrested." Olivia buried her face in his chest, pretending to cry. She could feel his anger, his pain, and she fed off it. "Oh, my love, this is too much," she sobbed. Adema held her tightly, kissing her hair, whispering promises in her ear. "We will be okay, Olivia. We will make another baby. I will do everything to make you happy again." She pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. "But, Oluchi." He placed a finger on her lips. "Shoo. Oluchi is my past. You are my future. I don't want to hear her name again." Olivia let out a small, sad smile and nodded. She had won. The days passed, and Olivia played her part well. She remained on bed rest, pretending to be weak, and Adema was by her side every second. He bathed her in love, showered her with attention. He couldn't get enough of her. To make her happy, he came home one evening with a brand new car. "This is for you, my love," he said, handing her the keys. "I just want to see you smile again." Olivia gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. "Adema, this is too much." "Nothing is too much for the woman I love," he said, pulling her into a deep kiss. Adema found himself thinking of Olivia all the time. When he was at work, she was on his mind. When he woke up, the first thing he wanted was her. He was obsessed. Every moment without her felt like a moment wasted. Meanwhile, Oluchi had tried several times to reach him. He ignored her calls, deleting her messages without reading them. He didn't care anymore. But Oluchi was not ready to be ignored. One afternoon, she walked into his office, determined to get answers. Adema was sitting behind his desk when he looked up and saw her. His face immediately darkened. "Oluchi, who let you in here?" His tone was cold, distant. Oluchi blinked in surprise. "Adema, it's me, Oluchi." "And so," he snapped, "what's special about you?" She took a step back, hurt flashing in her eyes. "Why are you talking to me like this?" Adema let out a deep sigh, leaning back in his chair. "Oluchi, please. Me be. I am in a good place with Olivia. She loves me. Unlike you, who kept pushing me away." Oluchi's heart pounded. "Adema, you're not yourself. Can see it. You've changed. Something is wrong." Adema stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Oluchi, if you don't leave right now, I will call security." Oluchi stared at him, tears gathering in her eyes. "Adema, what has she done to you?" He pointed at the door. "Get out." Shaking her head in disbelief, Oluchi turned and walked away. But as she left his office, she whispered to herself, "This is not over." That night, Olivia lay beside Adema, running her fingers through his hair. "I love you so much," she whispered. Adema pulled her closer. "I love you more, my queen. You are my everything." She smiled against his chest. "Promise me you'll never leave me." "I swear on my life," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her lips. But deep inside, Olivia knew the truth. She had done the unthinkable, and now there was no going back. She had sacrificed her own child. She had tied Adema to herself in a way that no one could break. And yet, she could still feel a shadow lurking. Somewhere deep inside, she knew that the spirits had not finished with her yet. She had won the man. But at what cost? The night was silent, but Olivia's heart was restless. And then, for the first time since the sacrifice, she heard it. Baby's cry. She sat up, frozen in place. Adema stirred beside her. "What is it, my love?" Olivia's lips trembled. The cries grew louder. A chill ran down her spine. And then, a whisper. "Mommy, why did you give me away?" Olivia's scream tore through the night like a knife. Adema woke up with a jolt, his heart pounding as he reached for her. "Olivia, what is it?" His voice was hoarse with sleep, but the fear in her wide eyes jolted him fully awake. She was shaking violently, her breath coming in gasps. Her hands gripped the sheets as if she was trying to hold on to something slipping away. I heard something," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Heard what?" Adema cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "A baby crying." The words sent chills down Adema's spine. He swallowed, pulling her into his arms. "It's just your mind playing tricks, my love. You've been through a lot." Olivia didn't respond. She wasn't sure it was just her mind. The cry had felt real. Too real. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. She picked up her phone and dialed the old man who had once warned her. "You have to get rid of everything that belonged to that baby." His raspy voice came through the phone. "The child is tied to those things. As long as they remain, the spirit will linger." A chill ran down her spine. Without a second thought, she stormed into the baby's room and started throwing things out. Tiny clothes, stuffed animals, the crib. She tossed them all like they burned her hands. Adema rushed in, alarmed. "Olivia, what are you doing? I don't want these things here. I don't want to remember," she screamed, shoving past him. "But love, we can't just. Let me be, Adema," she yelled, eyes blazing with something he couldn't place. Adema sighed, defeated. He watched her, his heart breaking, but in the end, he let her do as she pleased. Oluchi sat in her room, her hands clenched into fists. Her heart ached with questions. Why? Why would Adema treat me like this? Did he stop loving me? How did Olivia turn his heart away from me so fast? Her thoughts were interrupted by a call. She glanced at her phone. Jennifer. Her grip tightened as she picked up. "What do you want, Jennifer?" she snapped. Jennifer's laugh was cruel. "I told you, Oluchi. You and Adema will never be together. Accept it." Uchi's nostrils flared. "Get off my phone, Jennifer. You will never win." She ended the call and, in rage, grabbed the nearest object and flung it across the room. "Adema, how could you do this to me?" she whispered, tears rolling down her face. Things settled into a new normal. But it was a dangerous kind of normal. Adema was obsessed with Olivia. He did everything she asked without question. She asked for a position on the board. He gave it to her. She wanted his time, he gave it all. He wanted nothing but to make her happy. One evening, she brought some documents to his office. Without even reading, he signed them. His assistant frowned. "Sir, should you not review? Are you questioning me?" Adema snapped. The assistant quickly lowered his gaze. But inside, he knew something was terribly wrong. The next day, Oluchi received a call from an unknown number. "Oluchi, if you still care about Adema, you need to act now. If you don't, he will be destroyed." She frowned. "Why should I care?" "Because Olivia is not who she pretends to be." Uchi froze. "Think about it," the caller said. "Act before it's too late." The line went dead. Shaken, she drove straight to Auntie Ego's house. Auntie Ego took one look at her face and sighed. "Something is wrong, isn't it?" Oluchi nodded, tears in her eyes. "Auntie, Adema is in trouble. I know it. But I don't know what to do." Auntie Ego sat quietly for a moment before saying, "Then we must go to Coco Village. There is a woman there. She will tell us what must be done." Oluchi swallowed hard. She had no idea that the journey to Coco Village would change everything. That night, Jennifer called Olivia. "Olivia, my girl. You are doing well. I saw the engagement. Congratulations." Olivia sighed, rubbing her temples. "Jennifer, I sacrificed my baby for all this. That was not part of the deal." Jennifer's voice turned sharp. "Are you complaining? Is Adema not yours now?" Olivia bit her lip. "Don't forget, Olivia. To whom much is back the soul of Adema from the land of the dead? Uchi's blood ran cold as she turned to Auntie Ego. The room suddenly felt smaller. The air felt thinner. Then, the fire in the calabash flickered violently. The old woman sat in silence for a moment, staring deep into the flickering flames of the calabash before her. The fire danced and crackled, casting eerie shadows across the walls of the dimly lit hut. Then, without warning, she let out a long sigh and shook her head. "Everything that has a beginning must have an end," she muttered. But some endings are darker than the night itself. Oluchi's heart pounded in her chest. Her palms were damp, and an uneasy shiver ran down her spine. She had come here desperate for answers, yet every word the old woman spoke only tightened the knot of fear in her stomach. "Mama, please. I don't understand," Oluchi whispered, her voice trembling. "Speak plainly." The old woman lifted her gaze, her cloudy eyes holding something deeper than age. Something ancient, something knowing. The weight of her stare made Oluchi feel small, as if she was standing at the edge of something vast and unknowable. "Some truths are not meant for mortal ears," the old woman said. "And some paths once taken cannot be reversed." Oluchi clenched her fists, frustration rising in her chest. "Mama, I love Adema. I don't care what it takes, I just want him back." Auntie Ego, who had been silent until now, placed a firm but gentle hand on Oluchi's shoulder. "Please, Mama," she pleaded, her voice softer. "She's suffering. Tell us what must be done." The old woman studied Oluchi. Her lips pursed as if she was debating whether or not to reveal the truth. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she exhaled and spoke. "The gods themselves were shaken by the sacrifice made on Adema's head," she finally said. Even they could not believe it. Auntie Ego stiffened beside Oluchi. "Sacrifice?" The old woman nodded solemnly. "A great one. A blood sacrifice." Her voice dropped to a whisper, as if the walls themselves might be listening. "Olivia sacrificed her own child to bind Adema to her. That level of sacrifice cannot be undone with mere prayers or rituals. Blood calls for blood." Oluchi's body went cold. A sharp ringing filled her ears as the old woman's words sank in. Her breath came in shallow gasps. "You mean, to free Adema, someone else has to?" The old woman cut her off, her voice firm. "A life for a life." Silence filled the hut, thick and suffocating. The fire crackled, but it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Auntie Ego was the first to speak. "Mama, there must be another way. Is there nothing else that can be done?" The old woman shook her head. "The only way to break Olivia's hold on him is to offer another life. And not just any life." Her eyes, dark and knowing, locked onto Oluchi. "The blood of someone who truly loves him." The words hit Oluchi like a slap. Did this mean she had to give up her own life for Adema? A cold dread curled around her heart. Her knees weakened, and she felt herself swaying. Auntie Ego caught her before she could collapse. "This is madness," Auntie Ego whispered fiercely. "There has to be another way." The old woman only turned back to the fire, her expression unreadable. "Go home," she said. "Think about what I have told you. When you return, you will know if your love is strong enough." Oluchi swallowed hard, blinking back tears. The flames flickered, as if mocking her pain. Meanwhile, in Lagos, Adema was no longer the man everyone once knew. He was at Olivia's beck and call, following her like a lost puppy. It was as if he had no will of his own. One morning, as Olivia prepared to go to the salon, she picked up her purse and turned to leave. But when she reached the door, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Adema standing there, his face blank. "Where are you going?" he asked softly. "To the salon," she replied, raising an eyebrow. Without hesitation, he grabbed his car keys. "I'm coming with you." She frowned. "Why?" His eyes softened, almost childlike. "I just want to always be with you." Olivia stared at him, confused. It was one thing for a man to love a woman, but this was something else. It was becoming too much. At first she had enjoyed the power, the control. But now, Adema's obsession was suffocating her. One day, she went to a supermarket to buy groceries. While talking to an old friend from university, she suddenly heard a commotion behind her. She turned just in time to see Adema grabbing the man by the collar, his eyes wild with jealousy. "Who is he to you?" Adema barked. "Adema, are you crazy? Let him go," Olivia shouted. Adema's grip only tightened. The man struggled. "Sir, I'm just her old classmate." "Liar!" Adema roared. "No man should talk to my Olivia." Horrified, Olivia managed to pry Adema off the man. Without saying a word, she stormed out of the supermarket and drove straight to Adema's house. She marched into his bedroom and started throwing her things into a suitcase. "Olivia, please," Adema begged, his voice shaking. "I can't do this anymore," she snapped. "You follow me everywhere, you pick fights over nothing. This is not love, this is madness." Adema dropped to his knees, clutching her waist. "Please don't leave me. I can't live without you." Olivia tried to pull away, but he held on tighter. "If you leave, I will kill myself," he whispered. "My life has no meaning without you." Olivia froze. She had expected love, devotion, even obsession. But this was dangerous. In frustration, she slapped him across the face. But Adema didn't react. He didn't even blink. He only held on tighter, his grip desperate. Meanwhile, his business was collapsing. His employees whispered about his strange behavior. He no longer attended meetings. He no longer cared about work. All his attention was on Olivia. Back at the old woman hut, the old woman only turned back to the fire. "Go home," she said. "Think about what I have told you. When you return, you will know if your love is strong enough." Oluchi swallowed hard, blinking back tears. As they turned to leave, the old woman called out one last thing. "When you get home, 2 things will happen. Those 2 things will determine your decision. Be watchful, my child." Oluchi and Auntie Ego stepped out into the cold night air, their hearts heavy with uncertainty. The wind howled through the trees, whispering secrets only the night could understand. Would she really have to choose between her life and Adema's? And what were the 2 things that would happen? The shadows stretched long in the moonlight as they made their way home, each step weighed down by an unspoken fear. As if things were not bad enough, Adema took his obsession a step further. One weekend, he threw the biggest proposal Lagos had ever seen. In a grand ceremony that shook the entire internet, he got down on one knee and asked Olivia to marry him in front of hundreds of guests. The video went viral within minutes. The whole city was talking about it. Then, as if to prove his devotion even further, Adema bought Olivia a mansion in Banana Island. "Everything I have is yours," he told her. "If anyone stands in our way, I will destroy them." He meant it. Even Maxwell, Adema's closest friend, tried to talk sense into him. "Adema, open your eyes. Olivia is controlling you," Maxwell said. But Adema silenced him. "Maxwell, know your place," he snapped. Maxwell shook his head. "I'm your friend, and I have to tell you the truth." But Adema refused to listen. One by one he pushed everyone away. His family, his friends, his business associates. All he cared about was Olivia. Back in her luxurious home, Oluchi tossed and turned all night, unable to sleep. She knew what the old woman had said. She understood the price that had to be paid. But could she do it? Could she sacrifice herself to save Adema? She pressed a hand to her chest, her heart heavy with pain. She thought back to the way he used to be, the strong, ambitious man she had loved for so long. Now he was nothing but a shadow. As the old woman had warned, 2 things were about to happen that would change everything. And when they did, Oluchi would have to make the most painful decision of her life. Oluchi sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the candlelight flickering in the darkness of her room. The old woman's words echoed in her mind like a haunting melody. 2 things will happen. When they do, you will know what your decision must be. She hugged herself, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on her chest. Adema was slipping away. No, he was already gone. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to let go. Auntie Ego sat beside her, rubbing her back in slow circles. "My dear, you have to eat something. You haven't had anything since we left Coco." Uchi shook her head. "How can I eat when my heart is in pieces?" Auntie Ego sighed. "The gods have made their will known. If you want to save Adema, you know the price. Oluchi squeezed her eyes shut. A life for a life. Could she really do that? Before she could answer, her phone rang. She frowned, glancing at the screen. Her childhood friend. The same Ekin who had once given her his kidney when she had been at death's door. The man who had loved her for as long as she could remember, even though she had never given him a chance. Are you going to answer? Auntie Ego asked. Oluchi hesitated, then picked up the call. Ekin. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Oluchi, he said, his deep voice filled with warmth. It's been a while. Can we meet? I need to see you. She hesitated. I don't know, Ekin. Please, he cut in. I won't take much of your time. Something in his voice made her agree. All right. Where? Lakeside Restaurant. 6 p.m. I'll be there. After the call ended, Auntie Ego gave her a small smile. You should go. Get some fresh air. Uchi sighed. Maybe she was right. Little did she know, this meeting would be the first of the 2 signs the old woman had spoken of. They met at an intimate restaurant, one of the quiet places they used to go to when they were younger. Ekin looked good, his strong features, kind eyes, and reassuring presence made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. You look beautiful, Oluchi, he said, smiling. She managed a small smile. Thank you, Ekin. He reached across the table and took her hand in his. I have loved you for a long time, Oluchi. I never stopped. Even when you ignored my feelings, even when I watched you fall for Adema, I never gave up. I gave you my kidney because I wanted you to live, even if I knew you would never love me the way I love you. Tears stung her eyes. Ekin. He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it, revealing a beautiful diamond ring. Marry me, Oluchi. Her breath caught in her throat. She felt overwhelmed. He had been nothing but good to her, always there when she needed him. Saying yes would be easy, he was safe, kind, and he had already sacrificed so much for her. But before she could even think of a response, her phone buzzed violently. It was Maxwell, Ademola's best friend. She hesitated, but something told her to pick up. Maxwell, she answered. His voice was urgent. Uchi, I need to talk to you. It's Adema. His completely lost. Olivia has him under her control. He doesn't listen to anyone. It's like she has his soul in a bottle. Please, I know you still love him. You have to help. Oluchi's heart pounded. What do you mean? Maxwell sighed. He just announced his engagement to Olivia. He proposed in the grandest way, and the video is everywhere. But that's not the worst part. Uchi's hand shook. What is? He said Olivia is the only woman for him. That he can die for her. That she made him the man he is today. And he has set a wedding date. Oluchi's world spun. Check the internet, Oluchi. It's all over. With trembling fingers, she searched for the news. And there it was. Adema, down on one knee, proposing to Olivia in the most extravagant way possible. I will die for you, Olivia. You are my everything. You made me the man I am today. Nothing can separate us. The comments were filled with excitement, but all Oluchi felt was devastation. Ekin placed his hand on hers. Oluchi, please. Forget Adema. He's gone. But was he? Oluchi felt like she couldn't breathe. The words pierced through her like a knife. Ekin noticed her pale face. Oluchi, what's wrong? She couldn't speak. She stood up suddenly, knocking over her chair. I have to go. Ekin stood as well. Oluchi, wait. But she was already running out of the restaurant, tears streaming down her face. The second sign had come, and her heart was breaking all over again. That night, Oluchi tossed and turned in bed. Sleep refused to come. And when it finally did, it brought horror with it. She found herself in a dark, endless forest. The air was thick with the scent of blood. She heard footsteps. Then, suddenly, scream. She turned. Adema was running towards her, his clothes torn, his face twisted in agony. Oluchi, help me. Behind him, Olivia was chasing him, a dagger in her hand. "Run, Adema!" Uchi screamed. But his feet wouldn't move fast enough. Just as Olivia caught up to him, she grabbed his neck and whispered in his ear, "You're mine forever." With one swift motion, she plunged the dagger into his chest. Blood sprayed everywhere. "No!" Uchi screamed. Ademola's eyes met hers one last time. "Oluchi!" Then, everything went black. She woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. Auntie Ego rushed into the room. "What is it? What happened?" Oluchi clutched her chest, panting. "I saw him, he's going to die. Olivia is going to kill him." Auntie Ego froze. "The dream. It's a warning." Oluchi wiped her face. "I have to do something." Meanwhile, Olivia was still struggling with Ademola's suffocating obsession. The more he worshipped her, the more restless she became. She sat in her lavishly decorated penthouse, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Wasn't this what she wanted? She had gotten everything she and Jennifer had planned for. The money, power, the ring. And yet, something felt wrong. A voice in her head whispered, "You've gone too far." Just then, her phone rang. She answered without checking the caller ID. "Hello." A cold voice greeted her. "Olivia, have you forgotten what we planned?" Her heart jumped. "Jennifer." Jennifer chuckled darkly. "Yes, my dear. Have you forgotten that after the wedding, Adema must die?" Olivia's hand trembled. I haven't forgotten." "Good," Jennifer said. "Because if you fail me, you know what will happen to you." The line went dead. Olivia's grip tightened on her phone. For the first time since this all started, she felt fear. The next morning, Oluchi's phone rang again. It was Maxwell. "Oluchi, I'm begging you," he said. "Come and talk to Adema. If you don't, he's going to die." Her chest ached. She had to decide. Would she let him go? Or would she give up everything to save him? Oluchi sat in her room, staring at her hands. Ekin had proposed. Adema was getting married. And yet, she still had one final decision to make. The old woman had said 2 things would happen. They had. Now, she had to choose. Would she move on with Ekin and start a new life? Or would she sacrifice herself to save the man who had already chosen someone else? Tears dripped down her face. She had always known love could be painful, but she never imagined it could feel like death. As the night deepened, Oluchi knew she had until morning to decide. And whatever she chose, there was no turning back. Morning was approaching, and she had until sunrise to choose. The city was beginning to stir as the first light of dawn stretched across the sky, but Oluchi's world felt darker than ever. Wedding preparations for Adema and Olivia were in full swing. Florists, caterers, and designers bustling to make their day perfect. But to Oluchi, the whole thing was a funeral procession. Adema was walking into a trap, and he didn't even know it. She had to act fast. She had planned to go straight to Kolo village to see the old woman, but something in her refused to leave without seeing Adema one last time. Maybe, just maybe, she could shake him out of whatever spell he was under. She arrived at his office, heart pounding as she stepped through the glass doors of his company. The receptionist, a young woman named Efima, recognized her immediately. There was a time when everyone in this office knew Oluchi as the woman closest to Adema before Olivia came into the picture. "Oh, Oluchi," Efima said, her voice carrying a hint of familiarity. "Long time oh. You know, we all thought you and Ogre Adema." "Ifioma, please," Oluchi interrupted. "I need to see him." Efima hesitated for a moment, then sighed and nodded. "Go in." "But Oluchi, he has changed." Oluchi didn't wait to hear more. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. And froze. The man sitting behind the massive oak desk looked exactly like Adema. But he wasn't Adema. His eyes were cold. His posture stiff. His face expressionless. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, "Do you remember the first time we met?" Ademola's gaze didn't waver. "What are you doing here?" Oluchi swallowed hard and took a shaky step forward. I came to your house that night, when Auntie Ego sent me to warm your bed. I was just a girl, helpless, desperate. You didn't touch me. Instead, you kept paying Auntie Ego just to keep me safe, to stop other men from touching me. And then you changed my life, Adema. You sent me abroad, you gave me a future. And I... Enough, he snapped, his voice sharp like a blade. She blinked. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Oh, so you're not afraid now, ABI? You think I'm a plaything for you. You're jealous because I'm in love with Olivia. His lips curled in disgust. Who do you think you are to tell me who I should love? Oluchi flinched as if he had slapped her. That's not why I'm here, she whispered. Adema scoffed. It's too late, Oluchi. The only woman I want is Olivia. Our wedding is in a week. You have no place here. You're not normal, she whispered, shaking her head. Something is wrong with you, Adema. This wedding. Oluchi, he cut in, his voice rising. I am not a child. Leave me alone. Live your life and let me live mine. You never loved me. You rejected me over and over again, and now you want to stand here and tell me I'm making a mistake. Oluchi took a deep breath. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Adema, what happened to your son was not an accident. Silence. Then, Adema rose to his feet so fast that the chair scraped against the floor. How dare you mention my son? His voice was low, dangerous. Oluchi stood her ground. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, he roared. You've crossed the line. And for that, I don't want to see your face anywhere near me or Olivia again. I don't owe you anything, Oluchi. She opened her mouth to speak, but he pointed at the door. Get out. Adema. I said get out. He grabbed his phone. If you don't leave now, I'll call security to throw you out. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She took one last look at him, the man she had once known, the man who had loved her, the man who had saved her life. This was not him. Something had a hold on him, something dark. She turned and ran out of the office. She barely made it to her car before the sobs came. She had lost him. The hold on him was too strong. She could feel it. Her hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel. If she didn't act now, it would be too late. Her phone rang. She wiped her eyes quickly and answered. Oluchi. Maxwell's voice was urgent. Did you see him? She sniffed. I tried, maximum. But I lost him. Maxwell cursed under his breath. Oluchi, listen to me. You have to do something fast. I overheard Olivia talking to a woman on the phone. She said, Adema will die after the wedding. Oluchi gasped. What? I tried to warn him, Maxwell continued. But he punched me. Said I was trying to turn him against Olivia. Terror gripped Oluchi's chest. There was no time left. She had made her decision. She was going to Kolo village. She had to see the old woman. Maxwell's voice broke into her thoughts. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. Oluchi nodded, even though he couldn't see her. I will. She ended the call and drove home, her heart pounding. Meanwhile, in the village, Oluchi's mother sat on the edge of her bed, trembling. She had woken up from a terrifying nightmare the night before. She had seen Oluchi in a crowded market, calling out to her. But Oluchi hadn't turned. Instead, she had disappeared into the mist. It felt like a warning. That morning, she had rushed to see the village pastor, a man truly anointed by God. He listened as she described the dream, then closed his eyes and sighed. Your daughter is about to embark on a journey of no return, he said gravely. Call her. Meanwhile, Ekin couldn't shake the thoughts running through his mind. It had been days since Oluchi ran out on him when he proposed, and she hadn't reached out since. He had given her space, hoping she would come around, but the silence was beginning to weigh on him. That evening, after pacing around his apartment for what felt like hours, he finally picked up his phone and dialed her number. His heart pounded as the call connected. Hello. Oluchi's voice was soft, almost hesitant. Oluchi, it's me, Ekin said, his tone firm yet gentle. I just wanted to check up on you. You left without saying anything, and I haven't heard from you since. He exhaled sharply before adding, I also wanted to remind you of my proposal. There was silence on the other end, but he pressed on. Oluchi, you can't keep doing this. You need to make up your mind. I know what I want. I know who I want. But I need to know where you stand. I love you, but if you don't feel the same way, I'll understand. Just tell me the truth. For a few seconds, Oluchi didn't speak. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, Ekin, even I care about you a lot. And not because you gave me your kidney, but because you are a good man. She paused, as if struggling to find the right words. But no matter what I say, you won't understand. Ekin frowned, his grip tightening on his phone. Understand what, Oluchi? If there's something you need to tell me, just say it. She sighed heavily. It's not that simple. Then make me understand, he pleaded. I've been patient, but I deserve to know why you keep running away from me. Oluchi hesitated, her emotions tangled in a web of fear and uncertainty. She knew she owed him the truth. But was she ready to face it herself? Ekin, feeling her hesitation, said, Oluchi, you can talk me when you are ready, I'm always here. As she prepared to go to Cocoa Village to see the old woman, her phone rang. Oluchi picked without looking and was surprised to hear her mother's voice say, Oluchi. Her mother's voice was filled with urgency. What is happening? Oluchi hesitated. Mama, nothing. I'm fine. You are not fine, her mother said firmly. The Spirit of God never lies. Talk to me, my daughter. Oluchi exhaled shakily. Mama, it's about Ademola. He's going to die, and I must save him. Then, her mother whispered, Save him how? I have to go somewhere, Mama. I have to. Oluchi, don't do anything you will regret, her mother interrupted. You know that nothing is impossible with God. You were raised in the way of the Lord. Oluchi swallowed the lump in her throat. Her mother's voice softened. You cannot save a man except God saves him. You are not God, my daughter. Oluchi squeezed her eyes shut. Mama, I have to go. If I don't, Ademola will be gone. Her mother's voice was firm. Don't go anywhere. I will be in the city tomorrow. This battle is not yours. Oluchi turned slowly to Auntie Ego, who had been listening the whole time. Auntie Ego met her eyes and asked, What will you do now? Oluchi didn't have an answer. Not yet. But the clock was ticking.